It's a pleasure having you, and thank you very much for joining us. The same, of course, goes to Jillian and Berenika. Thank you to Andrea for the technical support. So I think now is a good time to kick off the session. And I usually like to kick it off with one very interesting fact. And I would like to start today's session with this particular fact that really caught my attention. So one day in Venus is equivalent to 1 year on Earth. Let me add some context. As an investment professional, I was taught that the most valuable commodity is time. Unlike most other things, time once lost can never be recovered. Until space science changed the very basic assumptions I had about time and life. So I repeat, 1 day on Venus is equivalent to 1 day on Earth. From the high attention gained in media by Silicon Valley startups investing in space tech to billionaires venturing into space and governments sending space missions. For the past few years, the space industry and space science gained significant attention by mainstream media. So what is space science? Space science covers scientific disciplines that involve space exploration, study of natural phenomena, and physical bodies occurring in the outer space. It covers a broad range of disciplines, from geology to lunar, solar, astronomy, life sciences, and astrophysics. But that's not what drew us to space science. It was the inspirational nature of exploring the unknown for a better future and the impact of space activities on welfare of humanity. Today, we want to cover an angle which is not frequently addressed in mainstream media. Away from the billionaires venturing into space, it is covering the humanitarian angle, the link between space science and achieving the SDGs to ultimately create a more united world. I would like to welcome you to our session today, How Space Science Can Help to Achieve the SDGs. With us today, we have an esteemed panel, including Dr. Ugur Guven, Senior Professor and Aerospace Engineering and Consultant. As a brief background, Professor Dr. Ugur Guven is an aerospace engineer and a nuclear engineer. He's currently working as a Senior Professor of Aerospace Engineering and conducting research related to interstellar travel and utilization of nuclear energy for space missions. On the international front, he's serving as an advisory council member at the United Nations Center for Space Science and Technology Education in Asia Pacific region. And he's also a member of the Academic Council on United Nations Systems and member of the European Associations for International Education. He's also currently a member of NAFSA as an educator, and he's the honorary executive coordinator of the Indo-French Academic Alliance. He has over 25 years of work experience, over 250 academic publications. Next, we have Jillian Gloria, an aerospace engineer, space science advocate. It's a brief background. He's an advocate for science, technology, engineering, and math education and space exploration, all while making the bold decision to act as an inspirational force in her community through local endeavors with the Barnes & Noble, NASA Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex, Women in Defense, Orange County Public Schools, the Central Florida STEM Education Council, as well as global platforms via partnerships with LinkedIn, Fox's Exploration Outer Space TV show, and the Discovery Channel Canada. She strongly believes that by sharing her own love and excitement for space, she can inspire others to dream big. We also have Berenika Rozanska, the Chief Operating Officer at Phoenix Space, social entrepreneur and activist. Berenika has over 15 years of international experience in the social impact space that includes strategic planning, designing and delivering projects, and establishing, strengthening operational and administrative structures. She has successfully launched social enterprises, developed content, and rapidly scaled projects to improve the lives of the most vulnerable. She holds an MA in Cultural Studies. She also has successfully developed Phoenix Space, a social startup focusing on space science education. And finally, my name is Wahid A. I'll be moderating today's panel discussion. As a brief background, I'm an investment professional with a track record working with some of the world's largest investors on both large and mid-market debt and equity deals, including Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, Temasek, GIC, Mubadala, and select private equity and hedge fund and special situation funds. I'm currently leveraging that experience to create social impact by advising select NGOs, development agencies, and some UN agencies on their donor fundraising efforts and strategic initiatives, applying investment discipline and rigor to their fundraising process to create social impact. So against that background, we would love to kick off today's session with our esteemed panel. And the first question to all the speakers is about the potential of space education. So is raising the bar for scientific education an essential social investment? And what are the different ways that space science contributes to achieving the SDGs? I would love for Dr. Ugur Guven to kick off and pass it on then to Berenika and Jillian. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me here on this panel today. We had a small technical difficulty. I'm glad it's taken care of. Like I said, we live in the age of rocket science, but sometimes simple things can be needlessly complicated. I guess that's also part of life. And that being said, I do want to make a very important point before I go into more detail. And that is this: when people think of space science and space technology, they think about rockets, satellites, missiles, mission to moon, mission to Mars, galaxy, sun, solar system, etc. However, it must be understood that when we talk about studying space science and space technology, it's not just for the benefit of space missions, or it's not just for the benefit of launching satellites, or it's not just for the benefit of creating some sort of a space network. We must also remember that the technologies that's used in aerospace are also currently used in our daily lives as well. Like many people or many of our viewers, I don't know how many there are right now, but many of our viewers may not be aware. For example, a very basic technology, the microwave we use in our kitchen. Many people don't realize it, but this is a result of space technology. Why? Because when NASA were trying to send astronauts to the moon in the 1960s, one of the biggest problems they had was how to feed the astronauts, because as you know, a manned mission to the moon takes 3 days to go and 3 days to come back. And let's say you stay there for a day or two, so you need to be able to feed your astronauts in space for more than a week. So microwave was invented to allow them to warm up prepackaged foods so that this issue can be resolved. Otherwise, before that, during the Mercury program and before, when the astronauts were sent into space, they had to actually eat toothpaste-like food, so which is not very fun. Believe me, I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. I tried it personally just to see how it is. So I wouldn't recommend it on anybody for whatever reason. So another, for example, interesting technology that we use today, which is part of aerospace technology, is these big LCD TVs, LCD monitors that we use. This was, in fact, the direct result of the space shuttle program, because when they were sending space shuttle into space, they had to lower the weight because it was so heavy because of the old big, what we call CRT monitors. Of course, the young audience may not know, but they were the big old bulky monitors that were very heavy and very power hungry. And to overcome this, NASA started developing first plasma monitors and then LCD monitors. So today, I'm sure almost everyone has an LCD TV or a plasma TV in their home. When they use a desktop computer, it's practically all LCD monitors right now. So that is also a direct effect of aerospace technology that everyone uses in their home. For example, I'm going to give 2 more examples that people recognize. There are hundreds of them. Many people will have a memory foam bed in their bedroom, which basically takes the shape of your body when you sleep. This is also a direct result of aerospace technology that was developed for the astronauts staying in the International Space Station, or ISS. Last but not least, because of the tragedy of one of the Apollo programs where the 3 astronauts burned to death during a test run on a NASA ground station, a special type of fire extinguishers were invented to allow immediate immediate extinguishing of a fire. For example, many of the fire extinguishers that we have in our homes and companies today is also a direct result of the formula that was created during the Apollo program for extinguishing fire. So besides that, like I said, there are hundreds and thousands of other examples of direct effect of space science and space technology on our daily lives. For example, many of the antibiotics we use today have been experimented upon in the International Space Station because under microgravity conditions, it's easier and faster to grow certain medical cultures and to see their direct results. So this is very important for the audience to understand, especially when we talk about sustainability goals. Space science and space technology is all about sustainability, because the civilized life we have today, in many ways, in science, technology, medical science, directly comes as an offshoot of the developments that aerospace science and aerospace technology has brought for us today. Now, when we look at the Sustainability Development Goals of United Nations. We see poverty, we see hunger, we see education, we see equality, right? These are the main drivers or the main action plans that the United Nations has taken all across the world. But it must be remembered, space science is an equalizer for gender equality, because especially I see a female colleague there who's an aerospace engineer. In aerospace engineering, all you need is a good mind, creativity, and design. It doesn't matter whether you're a male or a female, as long as you can design something well, as long as you're creative, as long as you can apply your mind to the some principles of aerospace. Anyone can benefit from that. So besides that, like I said, these technologies that have been developed in aerospace are making the life of every man and every person, every woman on Earth have certain amenities. So in terms of, I believe, tackling poverty, I believe in terms of tackling education, gender equality, aerospace education and space education can really add a lot because of all these points I mentioned. Moreover, last but not least, one of the other important points for sustainability is energy. You know, the world is on the brink of an energy crisis because the amount of fossil fuels and the amount of certain classical energy production methods that we have are coming to an end, because the Earth has only limited amount of resources, whereas when we go out into space, we have unlimited resources when it comes to energy, when it comes to raw materials, when it comes to special trace elements that are very hard to find on Earth. Both the Chinese and the Americans have very advanced projects related to sustainability of energy using materials from space. Therefore, just to add it up, so I can leave enough time for all the other speakers to speak, I don't want to take their time. All of these things come together to create one big model of sustainability for everyone on Earth, whether you're living in Africa, whether you're living in Asia, Europe, United States, Canada, South America, doesn't matter. All of these things will benefit everyone in humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ugur. Jillian, very keen to hear your thoughts on this before moving on to Berenika. Thanks.
Absolutely, Wahid. Could you just repeat the questions for me one more time, please? I had some technical difficulties.
You're on mute, Wahid.
Can you guys hear me now? The question is, what are the different ways that space science contributes to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals? Dr. Ugur gave us an amazing insight into the different ways, the creative ways that the technology and the science can be used to target specific SDGs, like ending poverty, ending hunger, for example. Very keen to hear your thoughts on this.
Wonderful, thank you. I think Dr. Guven, he did a fantastic job of, that's exactly the route I would have gone, is just listing all of these technologies that have come along just due to the exploration of space. So these are what we call, some of the ones that he mentioned are called NASA spinoffs, and they range from everything from the camera on your phone that was developed for the Voyager mission to be able to take pictures of planets as it was zipping past, right? Or even to the rivets in the side of a highway to keep you from speeding off the road. All of these things are technologies that are invented or they're just derivations of things that have to do with aeronautics and astronautics and space travel. Because when we push the bounds of what we know here on Earth, right, we're limited not only with our resources, but with our ways of thinking. We're under a specific gravity. But when you go to the moon, or you go to Mars, or you go to other celestial bodies in space, not only are there different gravities, there are different atmospheres. The atmosphere on Mars is made up of something different than here completely. And so when you're exposed to all of these different elements, it doesn't just require scientists and engineers and financial advisors and anyone. It doesn't just require these great minds to think of terrestrial things, if you want to think of it in that sense. Like, you have to think outside of the box. And that's the one thing that I love so much about space exploration and STEM in general, is because you're constantly being questioned with what you know and what can be done. Are consistently pushing the limits of what's possible and making the impossible possible just because of this exposure. And like I said, Dr. Guven, he did a wonderful job of explaining just the variety of impacts STEM and space education can have, not only on the world, but, you know, on other worlds too. Like, who knows what else is out there. And it's really incredible because, again, with the diversity, you're really just opening up science to so many different minds that can help you tackle problems. And not only does that do wonders for the world of diversity, but that also helps science, because if you have women participating in STEM, right, that's in the US here, that's more than 50% of the population. And we've made great advances in getting women more excited in STEM than compared to the 50s and 60s. And so if you're just thinking about it from that standpoint alone, that's 50% more minds working on one problem. And so that diversity is so important, and it just opens up so many more doors.
Fantastic. Should I jump in right now?
Yeah.
For the same question. I think I am here today representing Phoenix Space. We are an educational organization working with displaced and underprivileged populations in the Middle East, mostly Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon. And we basically use space science as a vehicle to teach STEM in this region. So basically, as we all know, education is basically fundamental for all development and growth. Like, education is the basically foundation stone for us to be able to achieve all the SDGs long term and secure them long term. So educational situation in the region where we work is pretty dire. As you probably know, Syrian refugees don't have oftentimes access to quality education. And it's estimated that only around 3% of refugees worldwide are able to access higher education, comparing to 37% of the global average. Meaning, access to education in this region is really crucial. So of course, this contributes to the SDG number 4, which is quality education. But we really believe this then trickles down to all the other SDGs, because if we create innovative, inquisitive problem solvers, if we empower young people to have those skills, we are able to tackle all the other SDGs. We are able to reduce inequalities. We are able to boost innovation. We are able to decrease poverty. So really believe space science, because of its inspirational nature, and we've seen with our project so far, children get very excited when they work within an environment of space science, not only learning very dry like STEM formulas, that this can really bring them the change and the leap in their life, that they believe, okay, we can go and actually maybe we can study that, or we can be active contributors in society. So we really think that space science has this interdisciplinary and inspirational factor that makes it possible to contribute to solving SDGs long term.
I want to add just one small sentence before we go to the next topic, if it's okay with you guys. French is a wonderful language because it has such a poetic way of describing certain terminologies, which is not really possible in English. So there's a French terminology called le rêve de toi. Le rêve de toi actually means in English the dream of stars. If we look at the history of mankind, when we look at the first inception of the first civilized town, which I believe is in Göbekli Tepe, found around 9,000 to 10,000 BC, if I'm not wrong. So we talk about almost 12,000 years of history, possibly more if we look at the unrecorded history as well. So in 12,000 years, we know from various archaeological findings and cave paintings, etc., that mankind, when I say mankind, of course, it's man and woman all together as a humankind, please don't misunderstand. So mankind has always looked upon the stars, even 12,000 years ago, and has wondered, what are those twinkling lights? What do they represent? Can I go there? Can I understand what they mean? When we look at the ancient Sumerians, wow, they have really like created a lot of set of equations that have tried to explain the universe. In fact, today in astrophysics, the string theory that we use today is very similar to the findings of Sumerians many thousands of years ago. So coming back to my original statement, like the French have said, the le rêve de toi, or the dream of stars, it really sums up what space science, what space technology, what the aspiration for space means for humankind, from beginning of the dawn of the civilization probably till the end of civilization. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Guven. Berenika, I want to expand on something that you were talking about. So you were talking about access to education, and I want to really focus on that, narrow down on that, and expand that. And it feeds perfectly into my next question. So we're seeing an increasing need, especially in the region, as you said, for scientific and technological literacy among youth. At the same time, we're witnessing a decrease in interest among youth in STEM education. How can space science address the global decrease of interest in STEM education? Berenika, I would love to start with you if that's okay.
Sure, of course. Yeah, so as Phoenix Space, as we are using space science to teach all the STEM subjects, so we actually are trying different ways, and actually we are exploring as we go how we can actually make this happen. So how we can make STEM education much more exciting using the vehicle of space science. And as you mentioned, the problem there's I think it's called STEM paradox right now. So we have a lot of need to have STEM educated young people all over the world, because the 21st century requires of STEM skills to be acquired and to be put in the workforce. However, there are many students who drop off of STEM subjects because they find it too difficult and too uninspiring, right? So even I think in Turkey it's estimated that around 1 million people with STEM skills will be needed by 2023. And around 30% of those positions that are needed to develop certain industries and to advance certain parts of science or technology will not be filled. So we see a gap in terms of the need for STEM educated, let's say, populations and the reality on the ground. So we really think, and we experiment with this in our project, that space science can be a great inspirational vehicle to teach STEM, because it's much different if you're just going to go and solve formulas in your notebook, and it's much different if you actually imagine that you're going to the moon, right? You're going to the moon and you have this problem and that problem, and you have to make some programming exercise to fix something, and then something else gets broken, etc. So the children, we noticed, are getting very much excited about this, because it's really something that moves them, and it's really something that it's not very dry, but it's actually alive. And I think the other aspect of it is that really space science is something that's all over the news right now. Like, so all the space exploration, all the space launches, recent space launches, all the new companies launching into space. And I think being a part of something that's very much in terms of in the public, let's say, sphere, it's also very exciting for students, right? So they don't learn something that's irrelevant for them. They learn something that's actually happening also on their Instagram, and they see it in any other places. So it's much relevant to where to the society right now. So I think this inspirational aspect, the gamified aspect that space science can provide for teaching STEM, and as well as the hope factor, right? Meaning that there's when you learn about space science, it doesn't matter from which country you are, it doesn't matter from which background you are, it's a very universal subject, right? So it also, we've noticed many times, it brings people out of their everyday circumstances, out of their everyday problems, and makes them focus on something bigger. And we also think it has a value on inspiring them to pursue them.
Very keen to get the academia, especially coming from academia backgrounds, from Gloria and Dr. Guven, their takes on this.
Well, I'll just say a few words, and then my colleague Jillian can take it forward from there. One of the advantages of studying space science and space technology is the STEM education subfield, so to speak. It's a little bit different than everything else. Why? Because first of all, it depends a lot on your creativity. Now, if you look at the equations of physics and thermodynamics, obviously they're the same. So from a STEM point of view, you'll have to study science, you will have to study the mathematics, you have to study equations. But The interesting part or the fun part starts after that. How they apply them to create a project that's different from what has been done before. And this is quite important because today, when we talk about space science, space exploration, commercial space flight, or the formal space programs of the various space agencies across the world, we see that those, for example, nations which are able to apply creativity are able to do some of these missions with very little cost, very little cost as compared to much bigger nations. For example, I want to give an example from India. India had a Mars mission about a couple of years back called MOM, Mars Orbiter Mission. It was able to create a lot of interesting data for the whole space community. I mean, the good thing about the space community, they always share the data that you get from many of these missions, whichever nation may have the data. Now, if you remember the movie Gravity by Sandra Bullock, which was probably very famous a couple of years back. I don't know if anyone remembers it now, but it was a pretty big deal a couple of years back. Making that movie, that Hollywood movie, cost more than the actual mission to Mars that the Indian Space Agency did. So that was a very interesting point. Why? Because in fact, one of the orbital mechanics engineers of the program was my student. So I had some insight or insider knowledge about the project, so to speak. So I was able to see that they were able to create some very creative solutions to cost cutting, achieving the same results, achieving the same objectives, but with far less, maybe 1/20th the cost of what it would have cost NASA or ESA or any other space agency. So coming back to that, yes, it's a STEM education, but more importantly, it's a STEM education with creativity. And that's what I said at the beginning. It's also perfect for gender equality because it doesn't matter whether you're a male or female. It just matters if you are creative, if you're able to have a good design, if you're able to apply your mind on these basic principles and really get something interesting as a result. So I do believe that this is a driving force, a dynamo for all of humankind, like I said, since the beginning of time. And as a professor of 25 plus years, I've never ever seen a student from any background that did not get excited by the prospect of learning something about space, whether they're students studying something else, literature, philosophy, history. It doesn't even have to be engineering, but it doesn't matter. I've never ever seen any student in any continent, and I've been to every continent on Earth except Antarctica. I've not seen any students anywhere that does not get excited by the concept of space or learning something about space. And one last thought before I leave the floor to my colleague Jillian. Remember, and this is something very important for all of our audience, in the end, we're all the same. We are all born in 9 months and 10 days, which is my famous words. I'm sure Berenika remembers. So in the end of the day, whether you're African, Japanese, Asian, American, European, it doesn't matter. We all laugh, we all cry, we all get happy, we all get sad. And believe me, space is a great equalizer in all of that. Thank you.
And to roll off what Dr. Guven was talking about, there's just something about space exploration that calls to that innate desire we humans have to exploring what we can't touch, right? And there's just something so magical and fascinating and calling to us. And I think that's one of the reasons why humans are so fascinated by space, right? We have only recently, and in the human civilization timeline, have actually begun to touch the stars and go into space and go to the moon and things like that. And so since it's such a new thing that we're finally being able to do, there's so much promise. There's so much that we can do. You know, we've been on Earth for a while and we pretty much discovered most things that can happen here. And I'm not saying that there's other things we can't. Majority of the ocean is unmapped. But I think the exciting thing about space is that there are so many unknown factors. And so that is just, of course, going to call to anyone who is curious or fascinated. by learning, which I think is all of us deep down, whether it's your focus is space or your focus is finances or history or theology. We're all curious about one thing or another. And I think the beauty of space exploration and the reason why it makes STEM so interesting, it definitely speaks to me because, you know, I grew up in Orlando, Florida, which is not too far from Kennedy Space Center, which is where NASA launched astronauts to the moon and are launching shuttle missions and current commercial crew missions with SpaceX. And so seeing that for me it made such a huge, profound impact on me. And I never really thought that I loved engineering or mathematics because, as Berenika said, they are very dry subjects and they take a lot to learn. And if you don't have that deep passion for an end goal career, like I love space sciences and I love learning about the dirt, or it's called regolith, on the moon or Mars, and how we can use that to make landing pads and blast shields and roads. I love that stuff. And so if you are passionate about some end goal, which I think a lot of people love space for that reason, there's so many different things you can do with it, then it's going to give you that not only confidence that you need to finish the degree, but on those late nights when you're studying or when you're working 3 part-time jobs just to pay tuition like me, that's going to give you the drive and the motivation to finish. And so for me, space is the only reason I'm pursuing aerospace engineering, is because I love it so much, and that's what I want to do. And to be honest, like, there are a couple of statistics saying that mechanical engineers make, if you pursue a degree in mechanical engineer, you have better job prospects in the end because it's a more versatile, whereas aerospace engineering, you know, is strictly things that fly and go to space. But for me, that didn't matter. I didn't matter that, you know, the job prospect statistic was smaller for an aerospace engineer compared to a mechanical, because I didn't like engineering. Engineering isn't what drew me to these years of dedication and hard work and research. It was the ultimate dream of helping out on a space mission, contributing to anything space related. And that is the only reason that I do what I do. And I'll wrap it up here, but I just think that there are so many wonderful things that you can do with space studies. You can literally build your own rocket and launch it into the sky. You can send a balloon to the edge of the atmosphere and literally track it and put a camera on it. And you could have basically gone to the edge of space. And you can do these with simple like resources and tools. And we're in the digital age. We live in 2021. Everything is available on the internet. On YouTube, there are tutorials to build anything, and you can even like build your own CubeSat. CubeSats aren't even that complex machinery. And so I think that's the one thing about space studies that is so exciting. It's that not only as a student, you can build these things that contribute to space science, but you can do them without a degree. And that's the cool part. And I think Berenika has projects with her company, Phoenix Space, that are meant to do that, to provide anyone interested in learning about space science with these projects that you can literally do on your own with your friends. And I think that's the best part.
That was amazing. I mean, the passion is definitely evident in how Jillian was describing space science and just the wider space industry. I want to look at it from a different perspective. So away from the excitement, away from the magical nature of space, I want to look at the inspirational angle for youth who are going through difficulties when it comes to mental wellness. And that's an angle that we want to touch on very slightly. And we have a question for our audience as well. So given the inspirational nature of space science, do you think it's a powerful enabler to offer hope and enhance the mental wellness of disadvantaged youth. And I know Phoenix Space, for example, works with a lot of refugee children who went through a lot of pain and trauma. So we are keen to hear your thoughts on the inspirational nature of space science. Do you think it is a powerful enabler to offer hope and enhance the mental wellness of the disadvantaged youth and refugee children who went through significant pain and trauma? Please leave your comments in the chat section. And from that question, we're going to move on to a specific question to Berenika. So Berenika, when it comes to youth, there is nothing more inspiring other than having role models and actionable opportunities to support their aspirations for growth. Now, Phoenix Space programs not only focus on enabling displaced youth and disadvantaged youth to access STEM education, but also use the inspirational nature of space science to teach important 21st century skills. Could you tell us more about that, Berenika?
Sure. So whenever we kicked off our project is 1.5 years old. So we kicked off our project just before the pandemic has started. So we also managed to confront many challenges in the beginning by moving our projects from being in-person classes to online classes. But from the beginning of the project, we always focused that it doesn't only deliver the hard skills, meaning the skills that you need to actually get to university or the knowledge you need to pursue certain employment paths, but actually provides you with a set of skills that are needed in 21st century, whatever your career or life choices will be. Because we know many of our students will actually not pursue STEM educations for different reasons, because of family circumstances, maybe because of their personal interest, because of many other possible reasons they might have not to pursue this. So we know that if we don't provide them with skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, agency, they will not succeed in their lives, right? So basically, we are trying to design our courses, all of our courses, taking into account, it's called actually OECD Learning Framework 2030. The learning framework developed by OECD, and it actually points down all the skills that were identified by researchers that are the most crucial for us to be able to be successful in 21st century. So that's why we go both paths, but actually personally for me, it's much more important that our students come out of the project feeling empowered and they actually know that they can succeed in life, than actually knowing these bits of mathematics or these bits of physics, because those they can learn after or they can learn somewhere else. So we've been running multiple surveys for our students, and actually it made us very happy because basically almost 100% of our students, they say, your programs make me believe that I can achieve anything if I try hard enough. And I think for us, this is the measure of success, meaning if our programs made them believe that, they are ready to go in and deal with their everyday life challenges, and they deal with lots of challenges we ourselves cannot imagine, right? So on everyday basis. So for us, this inspiration and empowerment that come together with teaching space science and this, let's say, focus we have on delivering 21st century skills is crucial, I think, for long-term success of our project and achieving the impact we want to achieve, which is, as we are saying, all the SDGs, which is maybe more peace in the region, more economic growth in the region, more empowerment of individuals in their community. So this is, I think, the short answer for your question.
Thank you for that, Berenika. I would like to again stay on the topic of inspiration, because I think it's such a powerful driver for youth to contribute towards the UN SDGs. So I want to move to Jillian and ask her about, especially after seeing that passionate speech about her interest in space science and exploring that, what lessons have you learned that you would like to share with us today that could inspire other young people to pursue either education in space sciences or to pursue their dreams in general? Off to you, Jillian.
Thank you so much. You know, I think when it comes to STEM and space, it's very daunting for individuals who were never the greatest in school or who were never felt like they were the smart person or anything like that, or who are suffering from economical devastations and whose main priority isn't paying thousands of dollars in tuition to get a degree. And I completely understand that. And I can't even imagine what it's like for some of the refugees that you were mentioning, Veronica. But just one thing about STEM is, another factor that went into me deciding to go back to school and to actually get a degree, and for it to be a STEM-based degree. I didn't start off college in calculus. I thought I was kind of smart in high school, but there are so many other factors that go into it. I was never great at math. I loved physics, but I never passed physics. I could never do it. And so the thing about STEM is, no matter the kind of suffrage you're going through now, STEM is one of the highest paying degrees that you can obtain in the world right now, right? And not only is it going to lead to prospective monetary value with your career, but it's a ever developing career path that is only going to continue to grow. And so it's not like you're going to be putting in all of this hard work to learn these advanced concepts just to have, an okay life. No, STEM degrees in space sciences, they provide you with prospective futures, not only with your career, but financially as well. And so all of that hard work that you're putting in, it's going to pay off, and it's going to substantially increase your well-being of life. And so I think that's really important to state, because it is a very difficult degree to obtain, just because the complex classes and the mathematics are so different than what you learn growing up. They're not, people skills. They're not communication. They're not history. They're, you have to be very detail-oriented and remember the steps. So I think going through the motions and me choosing to pursue a STEM-based degree, looking at my future now, it is so much more prospective than what I could have imagined at the start of my academic career. And I know it's only going to continue to grow from there. And so I think that's one thing that's important to note, is that it will provide a better life for you financially, whether that's supporting your family is what's your main value that you were trying to get after in life. And I understand for refugees, that's huge. And so why not take that time to develop these industry sought out skills that are not going away? They're only getting more and more demand. And not only that, you'll always have a job. You're going to have a life where you can afford to have a roof over your head and eat, and nicer things in life, just a higher quality of life in general. And so I think that's just one of the main things that I would like to say about STEM and space sciences, is that it's worth it.
Thank you for sharing that, Jillian. We have a great comment from Koshi. So he's saying, I think Dr. Ugur Guven words that space science is a great equalizer is very meaningful. And that brings me to my final question. Now, Dr. Guven, I appreciate that we have less than 5 minutes for answer for this question. And I definitely know that's not enough, but would appreciate it if we can get your answer to this final question before wrapping up our session today. Do you feel that the topic of space can be leveraged to foster international collaboration beyond borders and national regional interests? Very keen to hear your thoughts. That question is specific to Dr. Guven. Off to you, sir.
Of course, thank you. I do want to make one important point before I directly answer this, which is this. Being involved in space doesn't mean just you only have to be a space scientist or an aerospace engineer. It's much more than that. Anybody with any different profession can be part of this sector. That's what I mean when I say space is a great equalizer, because it's just about your brain power that counts. For example, Wahid, you would know probably this better than me, since you're, I believe, an investment banker, or at least an expert in investment strategies. Stanley Morgan just recently released a report saying how space economy is very important for the overall global economy, and how it will drive new careers and new economical indicators forward. in the upcoming 10 years. So it's not just about learning aerospace engineering, but it's also becoming part of something greater than yourself. And that's what humanity is all about, becoming greater than yourself. For example, there was some study by African students on the fishing routes near Madagascar. As you know, many of the African nations, which are bordering Indian Ocean, have their income coming from fisheries or catching fish and exporting these fish to European nations. So students used available resources, such as Google satellites, such as some of the satellites which give public images from time to time, and they actually mapped out the best routes for fisheries, and they were able to share this information with some local fishing companies, which changed their strategies so that when they went out for fishing, usually this was for weeks at a time because they're going out into the ocean, they were able to catch more fish in a more efficient manner and come back home safely in a much more faster amount of time. So this is what I mean when I say it's not just about being an aerospace engineer. It's also about creating sustainability through increasing food supplies. It's creating sustainability through finding more raw materials, which were not possible to find before, using remote sensing techniques. So coming back to your question of international collaboration, I do believe that, yes, because space is a great equalizer, more and more nations are collaborating with each other when it comes to space. For example, Russia and the United States at one time, they were very, how should I say, having a political, I don't want to say Cold War because it's more recent, but they were having some sort of political friction between them. But eventually, for many years after the space shuttle program was discontinued by the Americans, it was the Russians that kept carrying American astronauts into space, into International Space Station, regardless of the problems they were having between each other as nations. Today, many nations, including China, India, have their own space programs where they go out to different planets and they collect a lot of data. That data is being shared with the whole world. There's a lot of data. I mean, obviously there are some military concepts as well, but beyond that, all of these nations share their data with the whole world. All of them work together. For example, the first mission that found war on the moon in 2009 was by Indians. It was a joint Indian-NASA mission, which actually found the traces of war on the moon. So I believe in terms of international collaboration, space is the best concept you can have, because when you say space, obviously the general diplomatic apprehensions that many nations feel becomes less so. And that's one of the reasons why I always keep saying space is the great equalizer. That's why I always keep saying Le Rêve d'Étoile, or the dream of stars, is the biggest dynamo of humankind since the beginning of the dawn of time. I do believe it's not about just space exploration, but it's also about making our world a better place to live with the technologies that are invented through space exploration, with the new findings that we get from various remote sensing missions that help us find more resources on Earth, or like the fishery project I gave you, which allowed African fishery groups to actually go out into the ocean, fish better, and come back safely, because ocean can be a very dangerous place when there's a big storm or a big hurricane, etc. Therefore, we have to take a greater context in everything. And whether you're in Africa, whether you're in Asia, whether you're in the US or Russia, or Japan, doesn't matter. We all use space technology to some extent. When you get lost and when you go on Google Maps, when your phone tells you the directions to go to a certain direction, that's because of space technology. So last but not least, yes, international collaborations, I believe maybe international peace may be served better by having more collaborations in space, because I do believe that many nations put their apprehensions aside when it comes to collaborating on space science and space technology.
Beautiful. I think from space, national boundaries vanish, the conflicts that divide people become less important, and the need to create a united society becomes so obvious. I would like to finally pass this, give the floor to Berenika for her to give us her call to action. After hearing all these inspirational insights into space science, Berenika, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. So Phoenix Space, I mentioned, we are a very young organization focusing on delivering space science to displaced and disadvantaged populations. And for us to be able to scale and achieve the mission of expanding the space science to more and more populations and expanding STEM education to more and more populations and empowering communities for space science, we really need support of partners, right? So partnerships for the goals, one of the last of the SDGs, and we really believe only in ecosystem of organizations that support each other. It's a little bit like Dr. Guven was saying about international collaboration. We can only make a change if we work together. So if there's anybody here in the audience today that would be interested in working with us and exploring potential synergies of how we can make SDGs happen, please contact us. There are our contact details in the chat right now being passed, and my personal email is berenika@phoenixspace.org. We are also looking for volunteers and the professionals that would like to support our project. So if you are any of those, we welcome professionals from fundraising, from educational side, from engineering. So basically, as we grow, we need professionals to support us on many sides of the project. So this is another area that you could help us with. And of course, we are not shying away from funding. Like funding is crucial for us to be able to enlarge our mission. So we work with different fundraising experts, including Wahid A, who is present with us today. And we are looking for expanding the network of such experts, and we look talking to institutions that can support us financially. So another aspect, and we would love to talk to any of you present today about that as well.
And finally, I would like to thank our esteemed panelists for giving us some of their time today, sharing their amazing, not just insights, but energy. I think that energy is just contagious. It was simply, for lack of better words, phenomenal. So thank you for sharing that with us today. Thank you for inspiring us today. And of course, a big thank you goes to a number of organizations that have directly or indirectly supported us throughout this journey. A big thank you to the UNV, who offer, again, both offline and online opportunities for young youth to create impact and contribute to the UN SDGs. A big thank you to the Moving Worlds Network that have been acting as a powerful enabler to high impact NGOs through their S-grade program and as well as their expert tiering program and fellowship programs. A big thank you for Unite 2030 for giving us this platform, for giving us the opportunity to share these amazing insights and inspire youth to take action. And finally, a thank you to Altruistic and Catalyst 2030 for their support. I would like to end this session with a quote: "Arts, sciences, and all crafts are worship, if it is prompted by the highest motives and the will to do service to humanity." Abdul Baha. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending today's session.
Thank you. Thank you.